Warning: the following video contains images and spoken word that may be too intense for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Lena first noticed the shadows on a Monday morning, just before sunrise. They moved along the walls of her bedroom like ink in water, shifting and writhing just beyond the edge of perception. She blamed it on sleep deprivation. She had been working overtime at the law firm, burning the candle at both ends. Lack of rest could make the mind play tricks. But as the days passed, the shadows grew bolder. She saw them in the bathroom mirror, curling around her reflection like grasping hands. She saw them at work, sliding between the spaces in her cubicle, flickering in the corners of her vision. By Friday, Lena could no longer ignore them. "You look exhausted," her boyfriend David said over dinner. "Are you sleeping at all?" Lena stirred her soup, watching the thin trails of steam rise in wisps. The shadows curled at the edges of the bowl. "Not really. I keep seeing these things." David frowned. "What kind of things?" She hesitated. "Shadows, moving on their own, like they're alive." David laughed, but it was forced. "You're just tired, baby. Maybe take a weekend off. Sleep in." She nodded, though she knew rest wouldn't change anything. The shadows weren't a trick of exhaustion. They were real, and they were watching her. By Sunday, the headache started. A deep pulsing pain settled in her skull like a drumbeat. Her vision blurred at times, the shadows growing more distinct, taking on strange, slithering shapes. They whispered now, soft, unintelligible murmurs that tickled her ears like breaths against her skin. David begged her to see a doctor. She relented, making an appointment with an ophthalmologist the following morning. Dr. Ellis was an older woman with kind eyes and a firm voice. She examined Lena's pupils, checked her retinas, and frowned at the images on the screen. "Have you experienced any cognitive issues? Memory lapses? Difficulty concentrating?" Lena hesitated. Had she? Her thoughts had been muddled lately, her temper short, her emotions erratic. "Maybe," she admitted, "but mostly it's the shadows and the headaches." Dr. Ellis sighed. "I'm going to refer you to a neurologist, just to rule anything out. In the meantime, we'll run a few more tests." Lena swallowed hard. "Do you think it's something serious?" The doctor didn't answer right away. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. That night, Lena dreamed of writhing things inside her skull, their tiny bodies curling around her brain like vines. She woke up screaming. Dr. Peterson, the neurologist, ordered an MRI. The results came back 3 days later. When she entered his office, his face was unreadable. "Miss Carter, what I'm about to tell you is extremely rare, but we need to act quickly." Lena gripped the arms of her chair. "Just tell me." He exhaled sharply. "You have parasites in your brain." The world tilted. "Parasites," she echoed, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Peterson nodded, flipping the scans around to show her the images. "Neurocystic urcosis. Parasitic larvae have embedded themselves in your brain tissue. We also found several in your ocular cavities. They're feeding and growing." Lena's stomach churned. She clapped a hand over her mouth, bile rising in her throat. How? How did this happen? "Undercooked food, contaminated water. Even unwashed hands can transmit the eggs," he explained. "But the infestation in your case is advanced. I won't lie to you, Lena. It's serious. The symptoms you're experiencing, hallucinations, migraines, are the result of their activity. They're burrowing deeper. She shook her head, heart hammering against her ribs. What do we do? How do we get rid of them? Dr. Peterson hesitated, and that hesitation was worse than the diagnosis. We can try anti-parasitic medications, but the damage may already be severe. If we attempt surgery, there's a high risk of complications. Lena barely heard him. The shadows were moving again, curling behind his chair, whispering. "They're inside me," she murmured, "eating me alive." The medication made things worse. The shadows became tangible, crawling beneath her skin, pressing against her skull. She could feel the parasites moving, gnawing at her thoughts. Her reflection in the mirror changed. Her pupils darkened. Her skin turned sallow. The whispers became voices, urgent and hungry. David tried to comfort her, but he couldn't see what she saw. He didn't understand. "They're talking to me," she told him one night, rocking back and forth on the bed. David sat beside her, wrapping his arms around her trembling form. "Baby, you're not well. You need to stay on the meds. The doctor said." She jerked away from him. "They're lying. They don't want me to know the truth. The parasites aren't just eating my brain. They're changing me." David's face twisted with worry. "Lena, please." She grabbed his wrist, nails digging into his skin. "You have them too. I can see them inside you, moving, growing." David pulled away, fear flashing in his eyes. "You need help." Lena laughed, but it wasn't her laughter anymore. It was something else, something hollow. "I can help you, David. I can set you free." Lena grabbed a knife from the end table by the bed. The knife felt right in her hands. The parasites screamed inside her skull, demanding sacrifice. David was frozen with fear, vulnerable, unaware of the shadows writhing beneath her skin. She loomed over him, blade trembling in her grip. "I love you," she whispered. "But the parasites need a new home. My brain is almost gone, but yours is still complete, David, and they are so hungry." Lena held the knife against David's neck. He was too frightened to fight back. Lena slowly opened her mouth, and a stream of black ooze slowly dropped onto David's face. Lena could see the little parasites enter David's eyes and mouth. She screamed silently inside her head. She was powerless to stop the parasites as they infested David's body. David could not resist, and could only make muffled, choking sounds as the parasites infested him. Lena fell onto her back. The remaining parasites began to eat the last of her brain. She just laughed slightly as her mind slowly disappeared. Then she was still, eyes wide open with tiny black little worms moving over them. Searching for more food,